Okay. Now we jump ahead to April of 57. So 7 months before we're introduced to Yukiko. It happened around the middle of April. Though his life had been going smoothly lately, Masaki had felt unbelievably weary ever since he woke up that morning. Dory ran out of pills, so he figured he'd go to the hospital. However, he arrived to find several police cars stationed at the entrance. Right. I'm trying to remember the specifics of the first game, because there was a bit of a time skip in the first game as well. I'm guessing it jumped to April of 57, clearly, and that's what we're being shown here. I was trying to remember the timeline of the first game and where the time skip was. Right. It was after we found Kosaka, right? Or Kusaka, whatever. The teacher who was, doing the murder stuff. It was after that, and then there was a break. Yeah, and then there was a period of time where there wasn't anything happening, but then murder started happening again, and that's when we cornered Rukshiki. Yeah. So, okay. Stern-faced police officers and inspectors were shuffling in and out of the building. What's going on?
Masaki-san.
Just then, Maya Kamizono, who was talking with a fellow nurse by the entrance, noticed him.
何かあったんですか?
Maya's voice suddenly died in her throat.
中でよろしいですか?
Eh.
But it turned out there was just as much as a ruckus inside. Police officers had formed up in the waiting room, standing guard over the patients. There appeared to be few, if any, outpatients present. Hardly surprised, given the place was crawling with police.
Yamanouchi-sensei?
Maya hailed a doctor in the waiting room.
どうかしましたか?
Hey, Kaharu.
こちらの患者さんに状況を説明しても構いませんか? そうですか。では、あちらの部屋を使ってください。
The doctor indicated a reception room.
わかりました。Masaki-san.
Masaki followed Maya inside.
何があったんですか?
He repeated his question as soon as the door was shut.
斉藤先生が逮捕されたそうです。
逮捕? なぜですか?
Murder. Lots of it.
よくわからないのですが、殺人事件に関与していたとかで。
Maya's voice trailed off.
確か先日も麻酔科の先生が逮捕されていますよね。
村瀬先生の件とは無関係だと思います。すみません。説明すると言いながら、私もよくわかっていないんです。
She hung her head.
今は患者さんたちに事情を説明して。
他に精神科を担当している先生はいらっしゃ
いないことはないのですが、本当によろしいのですか?
今さら病院を変えるのも面倒ですから。
Masaki decided not to sugarcoat matters.
わかりました。では、そのように手続きをしますので。
ええ。これからもよろしくお願いします。
こちらこそ、ありがとうございます。
Oh, Masaki's making move on the nurse
礼を言わ
now.
なければならないのはこちらですよ。
Masaki once again wore his heart on his sleeve.
いえ、こんなことがあっては患者さんが離れていってしまうばかりだと思っていましたから。
ある程度のことは仕方ないと思いますよ。
Okay, homeboy's making moves. Okay, now this is 18 days after being introduced to Yukiko. Okay. 1957 was slowly but surely coming to a close. Though the hospital had been in a state of turmoil following the incidents from 2 springs ago, things were finally settling down. The director had resigned amidst the storm of controversy, leading his son to taking over and renaming the establishment Kichiki Hospital. Okay, so what was his name? Fumiya? Was it Fumiya? Was that his name? Who was Toko's adoptive dad, the guy who was piping his sister. However, with the exception of the imprisoned doctors, hardly anything else had changed. The hospital was even steadily reclaiming the patients they'd lost in the wake of those scandals. That being said, Masaki hadn't strayed from them once this entire time. Part of it was because he wished to keep his promise to Mayu, but as he said, the main reason was that he would have found it far too troublesome to switch hospitals. He simply wasn't that proactive about treating his illness, after all. Likewise, the reason he kept going to the hospital in spite of that was equally passive. He would have found it too much of a pain to consider what he'd do next if he ever stopped. Though perhaps that mindset, too, was just another facet of his illness. Masaki studied the painting in the waiting room. It's been quite some time since its artist, one Shinzo Mamiya, had been arrested. And yet, it still proudly hung there, probably because the patients didn't pay it much mind.
Masaki-san.
Just then, Mayu hailed him.
何ですか?
Man, I feel bad because I already know something's gonna happen to Mayu. Absolutely. The one other thing I wouldn't call it a spoiler because it's kind of like in the description of the game, like on Steam and whatnot, is the fact that Masaki's kind of like a second protagonist in the story. Like, Reiji's still our primary guy, but Masaki's also there. We see his viewpoint from time to time. It's just like two perspectives on the story. So I know that he's essentially a secondary protagonist, which means that, you know, the protagonist's curse in this series is essentially you're gonna watch the people you care about fucking die. That's just gonna happen. Shugo had it happen, Reiji had it happen. As far as I can tell, the only person Masaki even cares about at this point is this nurse, which is very unfortunate because I don't know what's about to go down, but I don't have high hopes for her. I don't have high hopes for her. If she does survive, hey, props, but I'm not gonna hold my breath on that one.
お薬の用意ができましたよ。
ああ、はい。
相変わらず絵がお好きなんですね。
仕事ですから。
まさきさんも絵を描かれるのですか？
ずっと昔、少しだけ。
でも、お仕事にしていらっしゃるのでしょ？
仕事といっても小さな画廊です。
They mostly dealt with no-name artists, so rarely was it he got to see the works of people with a pedigree like Shinzo Mamiya's.
私も少しだけ勉強したんです。この絵の作者についても。
ええ。何でも絵のモチーフにするために助手を殺害したとか。
I could never stoop to such depths. Is it truly impossible to become an artist without having such deranged impulses?
空の少女でしたか。
We've seen her a
ま
time
さ
or
きさん
two.
はその絵をご覧になったことはあるんですか？
一度だけ。上野で個展が開かれた際に見に行きました。
Masaki never could have drawn something so insane, even though he'd have been the first to admit that madness was the current master of his mind.
難しい世界なんですね。
Mayu sighed sadly.
それで自分の薬は？
Anyway, my pills?
そうでした。
Mayu frantically checked her paperwork.
こちらの診察室ですね。
ありがとう。
Come on, Masaki, don't fumble the baddie, alright? Like, honestly, it's probably a smart move to fumble the baddie so, you know, you don't get all, you know, torn up when she inevitably dies, but also, come on, you're clearly making moves here whether you're trying or not.
いえ、すみませんでした。いろいろお聞きするようなことをしてしまって。
Mayu bowed apologetically.
このくらい構いませんよ。できる限り人と話すようにするのは治療に必要なことでしたよね。
ええ。
だったらこれからも少しだけで構いませんから
Ooh.
話し相手になってくれ
Nah,
ますか。
homeboy's putting on the moves.
それはもちろんです。
Though Masaki didn't feel like he was making any real headway in his treatment, he had admit he grown fond of their talks. Yeah, he has. She's so fucked. Mayu retreated into a room she used for breaks. She leaned against the wall. Another day, another failed attempt to ask him. Oh yeah, she wants to ask him out too. Ah, so cute. She's so fucked. Mayu took out a little notebook. Nestled away inside was an old photograph. Maya had found it when she was sorting through her deceased mother's effects at the beginning of the year. Oh. It depicted a lone man who looked much like Masaki. Though it couldn't have been him, naturally. The photo was clearly far too marred with age for that. However, the man appeared to be in his early 30s, much like Masaki. Just who could he be? Maya had been dying to ask Masaki that question. I see. So Mayu has ulterior motives, right? She wants to get close to him so she can ask, hey, do you know who this guy is? Apparently he's connected to my mother. However, it had already been nearly a year since that notion first came to her. Masaki was visiting a hospital again today. He'd been prescribed sleeping pills on account of his sleep disorder apparently growing worse. I remembered explaining to him that the sooner one took them, the better, since they took a while to kick in. That was why she couldn't ask him. Not when he was about to go home after that. Or at least, that was the excuse she'd fed herself. Another sigh. She knew she had to ask soon. She knew there wasn't much time left. And yet, suddenly the door opened with a clack, calling any further rumination from Mayu.
上園さん、山之内先生、どうかなさったんですか？
先ほど精神科を受診していた患者さんが。
まさきさんですか？
お財布だから気づけば戻ってくると思うのだけど。
Mayu checked the clock. Nakano Station, the closest station to the hospital, was less than 5 minutes away. Masaki had gone there, he would have already come back long ago to retrieve his wallet once he'd noticed it was missing. Meaning he'd likely decided to walk home or something.
私が届けてきます。
These words were out of Maya's mouth before she even realized what she was saying.
お願いできるかしら。
It was with that thought that Maya reluctantly searched Masaki's wallet. Within it were coins, bills, and a pharmacy receipt. Unfortunately for her, though, she found no driver's license or anything of the sort.
診察券。
Eventually, though, she procured an orange piece of paper emblazoned with the name Tomoyuki Masaki. Much to her dismay, it listed no other information apart from the letter O, his blood type.
山之内先生。
おそらく受付の書下にあると思うわ。
わかりました。
Maya left the break room and made a beeline for her new
どう
destination.
したの、上園さん？
A fellow nurse who was working at the desk looked up when she approached.
診察券を作った時の書類はそのはずよ。ありがとうございます。
Maya opened the cabinet, finding a jungle of papers neatly filed within. They appeared to be organized by date. Considering how long he's been with us, Mr. Masaki probably filed out his application early last year. Following that hunch, Maya leafed through the applications from around that time. Eventually, she found Masaki's in the January 1956 folder. She carefully took it out and studied it. Name Tomoyuki Masaki, address Nakano Ward, Nogatamachi 1 Chome. That was around Nogata Station on the Seibu line. No wonder he hadn't needed to take a train home. Maya quickly copied down the
ちょ
address.
っと出てきます。着替えていくのよ。わかってますって。それと話はなかったことにしてほしいと先方にお伝えしてくれませんか？
What offer? What's the offer?
いいの？
What have you been offered, Mayu?
はい。今はちょっとそういうのはまだ早いと思うんで。
Though her coworker appeared disappointed, Maya was quite set in her decision.
そう。わかったわ。
You're gonna get killed walking to his house, aren't you?
申し訳ありません。では。
He's grown fond of your talks. You really want to find out what his connection is to this photograph. So of course you're gonna go to his address, but before you can get there... Maya bowed apologetically before heading to the locker room. The sleeping pills were already kicking in by the time Masaki got home. It was less akin to drowsiness hitting him like a train and more along the lines of lethargy gradually corroding him from the inside. His mind was fogging up, almost as if he'd smoked one cigarette too many. Those pills must have been far stronger than he'd given them credit for. Then again, that was exactly how he wanted it, given his recent unbreakable streak of insomnia. At least he'd be able to get a good night's sleep now, if nothing else. Man, he's gonna be lying down to sleep like, oh, finally I get a good night's sleep. And all of a sudden there's gonna be a knock at the door. He's like, son of a bitch. That said, perhaps his head would hit the floor before he could even reach his pillow. Just then, he heard a knock on the door. Who could it be? Landlord? No, I already paid my rent. Well, I would sure hope so. I mean, I don't know how Japan does rent, but around here it's first of the month. Buddy, it's the 29th. I would sure hope you paid your rent already. And someone from work, perhaps? I never got permission to take a day off to go to the hospital. No, hold on, did I? Now that I think about it, I can't really remember if I asked. Never mind that, I'll just open up. Not like all this guessing's going to tell me who it is anyway.
Hi.
Masaki opened the door without bothering to look through the peephole. For a moment, he didn't recognize her. Didn't Never seen her out of her uniform after all.
上園
よかった
どうして
お財布忘れましたよね
Masaki fished through his pockets only to find they were indeed empty. He couldn't believe it taken him so long to notice.
どうもそうみたいですね
どうぞ
Mayu handed him back his wallet.
わざわざどうも
Masaki stuck it back where it belonged.
まだ何か
Masaki leaned against the door. Mayu was a nurse, so she must have known the pills were currently doing a number on him.
これ
The woman in question presented him with a small scrap of paper.
写真
It was indeed a rather old one at that. The moment Masaki saw the man in it, he blanched.
この人まさきさんによく似て
知らない
え
だからそんな人は知らない
Ooh. Masaki flew off the handle before he even knew what he was doing.
でも似ているし
知らないって言ってるだろ
Masaki was raising hell. Whoa. Though he knew he was making Mayu cry, he couldn't stop the torrent of emotions erupting out of the depths of his heart.
帰ってくれそんな奴のことなんて話したくない
With that roar, he shoved Mayu away. Aww. Mayu staggered back a few steps. Masaki seized the chance to slam the door in her face. He then locked it shut and leaned his back against it. Aw, Mayu. Mayu was weeping on the other side. Before long, her voice faded away. Alright, buddy. Masaki slumped to the floor. His insides twisted and turned with regret. Though the sight of the photo had indeed triggered him, he knew he could have exhibited far more tact with her. Unfortunately, the pills had robbed him of his capacity to think straight. Masaki gripped his head and groaned. Part of him wanted to chase after her and apologize, but his muscles refused to cooperate with him. I'll say I'm sorry the next time I see her. And there won't be a next time, will there? There won't be a next time, will there? He hadn't even properly thanked her for returning his wallet. Masaki crawled over to his futon on the floor. It was a struggle just keeping his eyes open by this point. No sooner had he laid his head on the pillow than did he fall into the depths of slumber. Mayu went straight home after visiting Masaki's apartment. She hadn't felt like returning to the hospital. She lacked confidence that she could immediately climb back from Masaki screaming in her face. Though she knew she wasn't the perfect nurse, she could at least tell that Masaki's attitude had been a side effect of his medication. However, that knowledge did little to stop the tears cascading down her cheeks. Whatever she'd done had been serious enough to shatter his typical mild-mannered demeanor. Mayu took out the photo. It was the sight of it that set him off. Why? All she'd done was ask, since she was curious about the resemblance. Though she and Masaki had known each other for nearly 2 years, it was strictly in the capacity of nurse and patient. So while she was aware of his condition and whatnot, she hadn't the slightest inkling about his personal life. If the man in the photo was indeed related to him, perhaps there was some bad blood between the two. That at least explained why he'd sent her away without so much as an explanation. So that didn't clarify whether this photo had been in her mother's possession. Maybe there was some connection between her and Mr. Masaki. However, Mayu didn't know anyone but him who had that surname. And to her knowledge, her mother never had any friends or acquaintances by that name either. I don't know, but I doubt I'll be seeing Mr. Masaki again. Not after what just happened. Mayu's vision blurred with tears. She wanted to apologize to him and beg for forgiveness, but unfortunately it was highly unlikely he would grant her that. Wait, maybe he won't even remember this. He was under the influence of those sleeping pills after... A sudden knock interrupted her thoughts. Yep. Someone was at the door. Mayu checked the clock only to find it was past midnight. Who'd come to visit this late? Oh, check, ma'am. The knocking didn't let up. Check the peephole. Wait, could it be? No! No! Ma'am, you said it yourself. You knew he was under the influence of his medication. Which means what? He's going to sleep. Because they're sleeping pills. For the love of God, check the peephole. For the love of God, check the peephole. If you don't have a peephole, don't answer it. She wiped her tears and rose to her feet. If it was him, she'd waste no time apologizing. She didn't know whether he'd forgive her, but the fact he'd come all this way was definitely a good sign. Oh, sweetie, no. Oh, sweetie, no.
はい
Yep, and it cuts to black. Yep. Yep. Uh-huh. I fucking knew it. Oh, Masaki was like, oh, I'll apologize to her the next time I see her. Uh-huh. And you won't see her. He's gonna go to the hospital, and he's like, "Oh, where's Nurse Kamizono at?" And like, "Oh, we haven't seen her in weeks." Like, what? A syringe pricked a vein in Mayu's neck as a gloved hand silenced her. Moments later, she was pinned down so she wouldn't put up a fight in the time it would take for the drug to kick in. Two pairs of eyes met right after Mayu abandoned all caution and violently shook her head. She collapsed to her knees at that instant. It looks like the medicine's finally taking hold. Two robed arms caught her before she hit the floor. The photograph fluttered out of her grasp. It was promptly ripped to shreds and pocketed. Okay. Okay. So I'm guessing it was someone who was running surveillance on Masaki in particular, and then saw Mayu, found out that Mayu had that photograph, and like, ooh, that's something we got to keep under wraps. There's no time to waste. Though suxamethonium was a muscle relaxant that paralyzed its target in just 30 seconds, consequently lasted only 5 or so minutes. Work had to be done before then. Mayu's limp body was dragged to the center of the apartment, followed shortly thereafter by the shutting of the front door. Muscle relaxants could knock people unconscious. However, neither could a person form any expressions with their mimetic muscles disabled. Oh, that is a dubious base note. And since the drug also paralyzed the diaphragm, prolonged usage would result in death by respiratory failure. That in itself wasn't a problem, but it would render this all meaningless. Mayu's face had gone limp, her eyes unfocused. Can she even see anything like that? Oh well, not like it matters. After all, nothing she saw or felt would be reflected on her face. Mayu's clothes ripped open, exposing her from the waist down. A yellow stain sullied the floor, likely because her urinary sphincter had slackened. The preparation subsequently commenced with haste, accompanied by a sense of gratitude over the fact that she hadn't defecated as well. Though that said, there was only one thing that needed to be done while she was paralyzed. A dirk was drawn from a wooden sheath. Ah ha ha! And a moment later, it savagely gouged Mayu's abdomen. Oh no! Oh no! Blood gushed from the wound. Air escaped Mayu's mouth. Poor thing. Though she still felt pain and fear, she'd lost the means to assert them. The dirt came down again. Tears spilled from her eyes. Oh, so you can still cry, can you? I must admit, I'm impressed. So there is still a way for you to express yourself. God damn! The dirk drank the blood of its prey with no apparent end in sight. Eventually, the stab wounds linked and formed a gaping maw in Mayu's flesh. The tip of the blade pierced her abdomen. White fat and crimson blood spewed forth, revealing red meat in a white organ. The dirk impaled the uterus. Again, and again, and again, and again. Eventually, the edge of the blade clanged against the pelvis and spine. Ha! It chipped a little, but that posed no issue. The dirk was set aside as the gloved hands reached into Mayu's abdomen. Oh, God. Fucking Christ, your sound effects. Jesus. Fuck. God, I gotta give Innocent great props when it comes to their fucking sound effects. They definitely get the intended response they're looking for. They parted through viscera that gradually chilled in the face of the icy November air. Their vessel had likely already since passed. I would sure hope so. This should be wide enough. Shortly thereafter, a clod far too big to fit in one's hands was produced. It greatly resembled a human, a fetus to be exact. A moment later, it was shoved into Mayu's abdomen between her slimy entrails. Stop! Fuck. Blood seeped into the parched earth, almost like an actual fetus taking in nutrients from its mother. The clay doll was stuffed into the abdomen, any impeding viscera hewed to bits. A foul stench poisoned the air, likely stemming from her minced intestines. She's dead. It perhaps would be best to hurry up regardless. Through a preliminary investigation had confirmed no one else was in the apartment complex, there's still a chance the reek could tip off passerby. The skin of Mayu's cleaved abdomen was tugged. Before long, the incisions were stitched together by thick string and a curved needle. Perfection wasn't necessary. It wasn't like the skin tissue needed to be connected for a stitch. And with one final thrust of the needle near her soaked genitals, the job was done. Her abdomen was swollen, almost like a perverse parody of pregnancy. Inquisitive eyes scanned the room. It wasn't long before they locked onto wire hangers on the wall. Those will do. 2 hangers were seized. Once their hooks had been stretched out slightly, one of them was driven straight into the corpse's wrist. Ah. Christ. A hand twisted it until it exited straight out the opposite side. Hardly any blood was shed. The process was repeated with the other wrist. Next, the hooks were carefully wrapped around the wrists. Once the wires were used for actually hanging the clothes were extended, the corpse was picked up and dragged over to the curtain rail. The rail creaked and warped slightly under her weight, but it'd hold. Finally, the other arm was pulled up and tied to the rail by bending the hook. This should do. Fuck. Perhaps the rail would break apart by morning, but that wasn't a major concern. After all, it only mattered that the corpse had been arranged in this manner. Besides, there was hardly a soul around who would ever recognize it as the curse. Jesus. Like, obviously I saw it coming, but god damn. Homegirl got fucked up. Like, I don't know which is worse, that or like, the whole scenes where it's like they remove a limb. It's like, they remove a limb and it's like, it's done, game over. And I guess every now and again we saw the scenes where they like, shoved the egg up in them, right? But even that, like, fuck, I don't know. None of those scenes really fucking got me quite like that one did. Oh, and then Masaki was the last person. Okay. Yeah, it's a setup, isn't it? It's totally a fucking setup, isn't it? Because Masaki would be the last person that anyone would know had seen Mayu, right? Because the last people to see, other than Masaki, the last people to see Mayu would be the nurse attendants at the hospital, and along with Koharu, who knew that she was leaving to go find Masaki, and then she would be found dead in her apartment, right? Be like, oh, well, all we know is that they went to see Masaki, so now. Masaki awoke to a ferocious pounding on his door. He shook his head, failing miserably to exercise the dregs of slumber. It seemed the pills hadn't worn off entirely. Masaki rose to his feet and staggered over to the door.
Hi.
He opened up, his hair still unkempt from sleep.
Masaki Tomoyuki da na.
Yeah, I figured it'd be you. A man with glasses abruptly marched into his apartment.
どちらさん?
The man ignored Masaki's inquiry and shoved some sort of document right in his face.
殺人容疑で逮捕状が出ている。来てもらうぞ。
You, Yaginuma, you son of a bitch, you're always doing this shit. You're always just like, it was this guy, arrest him. And it's like, what if it was, nope, it was this guy. Same thing happened with Shugo and what was her name? Ayako? I think that was her name, the blonde girl. It was like, it was obviously this guy, book him. I'm right, it's this guy. And then you're gonna find out he has like an alibi, right? Although Masaki doesn't have a great alibi. He's like, yeah, I saw her, I yelled at her, and then I went to bed. And he's like, oh, so that's your excuse? You've just been in bed? It's like, well, yeah. Can't really have anyone vouch for me when I live alone either, but yeah, I was just sleeping all day.
Huh?
Under arrest? Homicide? What's this guy on about? The man cruelly snatched Masaki's arm with no regard for the fact the latter was clearly struggling to process what he'd heard. A second later, handcuffs sank their icy metal jaws into Masaki's wrists.
8時12分、被疑者確保。
The man checked his watch as he made the proclamation.
おい。
言い訳は後で聞く。連呼しろ。
The police officer Masaki hadn't noticed up until then emerged and seized his shoulder. That merciless pain demolished whatever vestiges of sleep still clung to Masaki.
何があったんですか?
僕は刑事じゃない!
The enraged man's outburst shut Masaki right up. Not a detective. Not anymore. I got a promotion. I'm a big boy. I, that is to say, Reiji Tokisaka, found myself summoned to the MPD on the final day of November. Police Superintendent Yaginuma, an acquaintance of mine, had come to me with a request. The There was no other way they would have opened the doors to Criminal Investigation Division, CID, Section 1 for a low-rung private eye like me.
そもそも警視殿が探偵を呼びつけるのが間違ってるんじゃないか
Get his ass. Speaking of Yaginuma, he was the very same guy I was griping to.
仕方ないでしょ。こちらも余計な人員は避けないのですから。
There's one thing I could always count on Yaginuma to do. It sounds snooty, like just now.
頼りにしていますよ、先輩。
先輩。
お前にそう言われた時に限ってろくなことがないで、どんな事件だ
Exchanging banter with Yaginuma wasn't exactly my idea of a good time. Thus, I got straight down to business.
単なる殺しですよ。被疑者もすでに身柄を確保しています。
それだけだったら
I procured a cigarette and stuck it between my lips.
おや、禁煙したのではなかったのですか？
家で吸わないだけだ
I lit it up and puffed some smoke for a while.
被害者が朽木病院の看護婦なんですよ。
I almost dropped my cigarette.
あそこの
Kichiki Hospital was a general hospital in Nakano that had formerly been known as the Kichiki Pathological Research Institute. I got involved with it due to some incidents that went down 2 springs prior.
被害者は上園真由、25歳。昨晩10時頃に自宅で殺された模様です。
最近取ったばかりだけどな
Oh, Reggie's got his licenses. Let's go.
じゃあ運転は任せますよ。僕が運転するわけにもいかないのでね。
免許持ってないのか
車の運転など僕の役割じゃありませんから
Because
ね。
I'm the one who gets driven around. I don't drive others around. Me, big boy.
ああそうかね
Yaginuma directed me from the back of the squad car until we reached the scene of the crime. Cops were cordoning off a 2-story apartment complex near a field.
周囲に家屋が少なく、深夜の静かな状況で犯行が行われていても、他の住人はほとんど気づかなかったそうですよ。
第一発見者は
牛乳配達の学生です。鍵のかかっていない扉の中に牛乳を置こうとして。
異変ね
おや、時坂はん。
Natsume! Oh yeah, that was another thing I wanted to say earlier. Is like, hey, I hope we get plenty of Natsume and like no Nana. Like, I just want to point that out since this one's gonna be like have references and callbacks to Cartagra. I'll tell you, listen, nothing has made me appreciate Natsume more than having to deal with Nana. All right. You know, when I first played the Shell Part 1, right, I was a bit harsh on Natsume, a bit critical. But dear God, I will take her any day over Nana, so please, by all means. What's up, Natsume? A door on the first floor opened, revealing a familiar face. Natsume, the coroner.
そこが現状ですか
うん、挨拶もなしでお仕事のお話どすか？寂しいわ。
Natsume wriggled in that typical manner of hers that was either serious or a joke. Probably the latter, though I could never tell with her.
遺体はまだあるんですか
Do I get to fuck you in the ass again?
これから検視ですわ。
I mean, yeah, where's the
ちょ
body?
いと妙なことになっとりましてな。お二人さんを待っとりましたね。
妙なこと遺体に何か細工がされていたんですか
せやね。ま、見ればわかりますやろ。ヤギのマハも金さいな。
Natsume beckoned us over. Body mutilation, huh? This was hardly my first rodeo with such a case. Is it gonna turn out just like those other ones? No, impossible. All those cases are closed. With the exception of the disappearance of a certain girl, anyway.
さっさと入ってくれませんかね。
ああ悪い
I hurried into the crime scene at Yaginuma's behest. First thing to greet me was a gut-churning stench. A foul cocktail of blood and excreta. Though the room appeared to have been ventilated, it reeked all the same.
あちこちに内臓が飛び散ってましてな。集めるのに苦労しましたね。
なるほど
Viscid bloodstains liberally decorated the floor at their end. Oh. Yeah? It was a figure bound crookedly to the wall. No, the curtain rail. The rail bent under her weight, clearly on the verge of collapse.
早く仏さんを下ろしたいさかい。ちゃっちゃと見てくださいな。
分かってます
So, where to begin? Okay, investigation time. And hey, This time, I actually knew about the patch beforehand, so now it's not just all covered in black cloth. So first and foremost, gotta check that wound.
何ですかこれは。
It indicated the corpse's abdomen. Not only was it swollen and exposed by a tear in her clothes, but it also featured a wound that had been carelessly stitched together with thread. Something was clearly in there.
ヒラ君はヤギ沼派の指示があってからですわ。
まずは他を調べましょう。腹を開けるのは遺体を下ろしてからです。
わかった。
I have to wait for the end then. Okay, is it still like in the first game where I have to like double check sometimes? Okay, but I'd have to wait. Alright, let's check those. I was gonna say check the wrists out, but I can't click the wrists. How about just like that?
ハンガーか。
Both her wrists were pierced by wires.
この部屋にあったんを使うたみたいですな。
Natsume gestured to several identical hangers in the wall.
簡単に見たとこ、亡くなった後で刺したみたいですね。
遺体を吊り下げるのが目的だったのか。
If so, maybe it was an allusion to something.
はっきりとも受け取る
Just like Jesus Christ's execution. Though the interpretation was admittedly shaky, it wasn't entirely out of the question.
な。現状にあったものを使ったということは、その用意をしていなかったのか。
Or maybe they'd used whatever was nearby so they didn't leave evidence of their own at the scene.
まだ結論は出せないか。
Go check somewhere else. You say that, but I'm still gonna click it again. Crucified body was strung using hangers had been at the apartment to begin with. Okay. I studied the corpse's face. It was relatively clean, not a single cut or scrape to be found.
表情がないな。殺されたのであれば、多少なりとも無念の表情が残っていると思うが。
眠らされて殺害された可能性もありますね。
That's my pointed to the body's neck.
注射針の跡。
せや、何が撃たれたかは司法解剖待ちですけど、殺される直前に撃たれたとしたら、睡眠導入剤か
被害者は看護婦だった。
In that case, it'd be prudent to get in touch with the hospital to see if they were missing any drugs.
他を調べてみるか。
You say that, but I'm still gonna double check shit. What about this little thing here? Pendant hung around her neck. Appeared to be silver, not too shabby, but clearly nothing all that pricey either. In any case, didn't look all that valuable, which is probably why the killer hadn't bothered taking it, if I had to guess. What about this hair accessory? Creature's been injected with something prior to the murder. Okay. Boob. Her clothes were ripped, exposing her abdomen. The killer had probably torn them.
繊維片なんかも調べるでしょうけれど、そっから犯人への手がかりは見つかりそうもありまへん。
Hardly a shocker. Leg. The front of her shorts had been left open, accentuating her swollen abdomen.
軽く確認しただけですが。
Naturally. Not with her abdomen like that. No indications of sexual assault. Arm. Shoulder. Left boob. Door closed. Okay, I think head. Yeah, it's still just all that area. That's about all places I can think to click. Perhaps it'd be best if I looked around a little more. Where? Do I click on the abdomen again? No. Click on the wrist again? No. Click on the pendant again? No. Her hair accessory? I tried, but it's just going to that. Oh, I'm a dumbass. I need to investigate the setting around the character. That was a thing in the first game too. I'm stupid. You don't just investigate the corpse, you also gotta investigate. Oh, let's click on the curtains. The room hadn't been ransacked from what I can tell.
何か盗まれたものはないのか。
Brought my inquiry to Yaganuma.
もともと何があるのか知らないのにわかるはずないでしょ。ただ財布などの金目のものは残されているようですね。
そうなると物取りの線はないか。
I checked the pool of blood near the center of the
こ
room.
こで殺害されたんだろうな。
そうですな。
そうして腹を裂いて邪魔な内臓を外に捨てた。
It was enough to make a layman vomit.
この部屋の両隣と2階は空き部屋で、一番近くの住人のお年寄りは耳が遠くて気づかなかったそうですよ。
少しくらい騒いだところで気づかれないか。
Let's check somewhere else then. This curtain. Wow, this curtain. What about the curtain rod? Okay, what about the crack in the window? No? Now can I end the investigation? That should do it. Okay, there we go. I'd probably have to wait on the autopsy for any more details.
お医者開きます。
Natsume cut the stitched incision open after the body was sitting on the floor. Next, she stuck her hand into the gaping wound.
よ、やっぱ何か入っておりますな。オーブン持ってきておくんなまし。
One of the forensics officers brought over an aluminum tray at her request.
グラスとなんですやろこれ。
Like, I know how her sprite like constantly has a cigarette in her hand. I just love to imagine that even while she's like digging in someone's guts, she still has a cigarette between her fingers. Like, can never put that down. You never know when you're gonna need an emergency puff. Natsume ultimately procured a discolored lump, decorated dusky red with blood.
成分分析は後で科捜研に任せますけど、触った感じ土でできたものみたいですね。
土。置物ですかね。
I donned gloves and cautiously studied the object, taking care not to accidentally break it.
焼き物というわけでもないようだ。
However, it wasn't clear what exactly this thing was modeled after. All I could really make out were grooves carved into the sides that resembled limbs. A body that was far too big for its tiny limbs. It wasn't preposterous, especially considering the fact it had been stuffed into a woman's abdomen.
そうも見えますな。ま、黒い卵じゃなかっただけよしと思う。
Haha, you're so funny, Natsume. Black egg. That was a term connected to a most gruesome case I'd been involved with last year. Though the culprit had been arrested, he'd left a trail of bodies in his wake.
似てはいるな。
All the victims from that case had also been women whose abdomens were sliced open, albeit with black eggs stuffed in their uteri rather than whatever this was.
考えるのは後にしてくれませんかね。ここを片付けるのもあるんですから。
分かったよ。ヤギ沼、被疑者は確保してあると言っていたな。
I asked Yaginuma after giving the clod back to Natsume.
ゆうべ、被疑者宅で口論している2人が目撃されています。
それだけか。
Is that it?
十分でしょ。
十分のわけがないだろう。
No. What? Guys getting treated like the killer based on that alone? Poor bastard. Yeah, but that's just classic Yaginuma.
でしたら。
I caught a gleam in Yaginuma's eyes. Well, in that case, if you would like to go question him, by all means. Less work for
先輩
me.
が証明してくださいよ。
Personally, I feel like I should be proving his innocence, but whatever flips your pancake, man. Whatever flips your pancake. I fucking love that phrase. Whatever flips your pancake, man. Reiji.
まだ犯人だと断じるには時期尚早じゃないか。
そんなことはありませんよ。
そんな曖昧な状況で。
逃亡の恐れもありましたから。
Yaginuma didn't have so much as the slightest decibel of shame in his voice.
無論、確実に犯行が不可能だという証拠でも出てきたら、釈放はされるでしょうけどね。
それを俺に探せと。
犯人と断定するのは時期尚早とおっしゃった先輩でしたら、無罪の証拠を見つけ出すことくらいわけないですよね。
So essentially, my job was just cleaning up after this guy's mess.
すべては教えられませんが、できる範囲の情報は本庁に戻ってから伝えますよ。
で、結局帰りも俺が運転するんだろうな。